For staying with us. So our guest today is Kemi Ojenike. She's the Chief Operating Officer at Meristem Family Office. Kemi is a seasoned lawyer and family wealth advisor with a proven track record in helping families preserve and grow multi-generational wealth. She's also a social entrepreneur and co-founder of the Destiny Trust, a non-profit dedicated to supporting vulnerable children through education, shelter, and empowerment programs. On Wednesdays, we like to celebrate women who are doing amazing work, and that's why we have her to join us here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So tell us a bit about the work you do. I mean, many of us see the impact you've made, especially with your foundation. Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into it, and how far have you come?
Awesome. Thank you. I'm a lawyer by training, right? And I started like most lawyers doing a law firm. Then a few years later, I thought I wanted to try something else, something interesting. So I went in-house into a wealth management firm. I was providing legal services in the firm. And then an opportunity came up to provide some legal support within the family office segment of that firm. It was completely out of my depth, but I was willing to try. And somehow from trying, I ended up leading that business. And from that, I moved to where I am currently, Meristem, where I now lead the family office business. Wow. So that's a high-level summary of what I'm about.
So wealth creation, wealth management, we're just talking about, kids and family, sustainable, living on estate and all of that. So how does this work? How do you, manage assets for people in, no matter, even in clean families? And what's the word? Simple families as opposed to complex. How do you even do? What do you do?
Awesome. So it starts with mindsets. Because we typically adopt a different approach. So typically when you think estate planning, you're thinking a will, you're thinking of leaving money for children and all of that. But
we're thinking rich people.
Rich people. But what we realize is that many times those structures do not work. So more often than not, you're hearing about people who are in court because they are fighting over inheritance, they are fighting over this and that. You hear of a founder, a matriarch, a patriarch, they've spent their lives building businesses. But if you think back, how many of those businesses actually successfully transition? Very few. And so what we realized is that simply arranging for money to be transferred is not enough, because what that means is that you're focusing on money alone, and that is the recipe for disaster. Because if success will be sustainable, there are a lot more other things. You need to be focusing on what we call your complete wealth, not just financial assets, because the financial assets are a tool. They are not the wealth themselves. They are supposed to support the other forms of assets, your intangible assets that you have. And if you're not doing that, what happens is disaster, conflict, people are fighting, children are unprepared because there are expectations that do not meet. So what we are saying is focus on complete wealth. And what does that mean? Your human capital. The people in the family are, first of all, your most critical assets, because they are the ones that will make the decisions that will impact the money. Then your intellectual capital. That is what you have created that translates to value, that translates to money. You need to be able to capture that. So whatever inventions, whatever businesses, whatever strategies helped you to be successful, there has to be a way of transmitting it. Then your values, your acted out values, not what you say your values are. Those are the things that determine the decisions that you will take. They are the things that will protect your family. And then the financial capital now comes to energize everything else and sustain it. Because we keep focusing on money alone. And it's like focusing on one tire in your car, and you are going on a long trip, and you ignore everything else. There's no way that trip will be successful.
I have never heard a wealth management person describe it as you have described it. Because wealth is just money. We put everything together to have that money, and that's what our children inherit. So thank you for that. It's just that you're here for Women We Love, so I'll just ask more personal questions.
Of course.
The question for me is, you tell us the story of how you transitioned into this business that you do now, and it's usually quite male dominated. And I wonder how you have been able to manage being in this sector, and what are the lessons that you have learned?
Awesome. So the first thing I would say that helped me is the willingness to try. Remember I mentioned that I'm a lawyer. I was practicing as a lawyer. And then my boss at the time gave me an opportunity to anchor an event, like an event of high net worth individuals, completely out of my depth. And typically the response would have been no. But I thought, let me try this thing out. I mean, it doesn't hurt. So I prepared for it. I read up on it. I tried to understand. I had guidance structure. And we did the event. And after that event, I got a double promotion.
Wow.
And the opportunity to lead the business. Yeah. And I just kept thinking, what if I said no? What if I tried to wriggle out of it? Many times we try to do things within what we are comfortable in. Yeah. But sometimes just give it a shot. You never know. It may not be perfect, but give it a shot. That's one lesson I've learned. Because the more you try, the more you challenge yourself, the more you will learn, the more you will evolve, and the more you will offer solutions that would not matter whether you are male or female. As long as you have something valuable to offer, you will be sought after. That's one thing that I've learned on my journey so far.
Wow. So this new venture now, did you go to school to learn it, or how did it come to you?
Honestly, no, because right now there is no degree that is called family wealth. You know, I mean, you have things around trust and estate planning, but that holistic approach, there's nothing formal. So one of the things that really helped me was that I encountered someone that I consider to be the foremost expert in that space. And I listened. A lot of listening, a lot of asking questions, a lot of reading, a lot of research. Honestly, I have not had any formal training on this, but just paying attention and trying and just evolving with it and also writing about it has made a huge difference.
How in your experience, how do you think it is for people to detach from something they built? So I know somebody who had a school, she all her life, maybe 30-some years, and then all the kids went abroad. They're not interested in that business. They don't care about, I mean, they have their own life in either Australia or some country. And then she has this huge estate, and she's thinking, who am I going to hand it over to you? So this is happening a lot today.
Absolutely.
How has been your experience in handling these kind of things where parents are now forced to either detach from what they've worked for or hand over to complete strangers or even sell it off totally? I mean, how has that been?
That a huge issue, like you said, a real problem. And one thing that we realize is at the center of that is that the founders are afraid of losing relevance in what they have built. Like this thing is like an extension of their lives, like their fourth child or something. But what we try to help them understand is what you're doing is you're not necessarily leaving, you're transitioning into another role. So instead of being the founder that was responsible for day-to-day decision making, you are evolving into a coach of some sort for the next generation. You're saying, okay, I've built this thing. Now I want to step back a little bit and see how it can grow without me. So they are not losing relevance. They will always be relevant in that venture. Another thing is that thought of, I want my child to take over. Usually we consider it as an event, not a process. So what happens is that the child has turned 25. You call them into an office and say, oh yeah, take over. And the child is like, no, as in I'm not interested, I don't know anything about this, I'm not. But it's not an event. That preparation, if that's what you really want, it's a process. And it's a process that you begin, ideally, since that child is still young and impressionable. You don't force them into it, you help them see the values that have made you successful. And then you have to align their skills with what is needed in that business. So if someone is artistic in nature, don't force them to come and be the CEO. Find ways that their artistic expression can benefit the business such that there's an alignment. So it's not impossible. We just need to be a bit more open-minded about how to get children to participate in the business and how to ensure that that business lives. Because it doesn't have to be a child that is at the helm of affairs. As long as it's a qualified person doing what is necessary and what is right, that legacy will live on.
You're so interesting to listen to. When you break it down.
I wanted to ask before
No, I want to bring it to her. You know, because with all that you've said, your career, it seems as if you don't have family life, other things. Is there no pressure from any other aspect of your life on this your part of career that you're
So I am married and I have 2 children. And thankfully my children are still young, so I get to sort of practice some of the things that I'm teaching on them. So I think the sort of family that I've been blessed with, we've always been big on building beyond us. So some of the non-profit work I do, I've been doing that for 13 years, and it's been building beyond you. So this just seems like a natural extension of it. So I wouldn't say there are pressures. I mean, other than the need to balance the day-to-day, time, taking care of children and all of that, I would say, thankfully, my life is very complementary in the different things that I do.
Wow.
So, I mean, the follow-up question I'm going to ask you, because I mean, what you said is so right. But you know, when you feel like I'm giving my company to strangers, and you're going to be, but you're saying no, you're going to be a coach. But I know a company where the man's fear is that how I want my children to benefit continuously, like children to know that I created this.
Yes.
But they feel that until my child is part of that, it's not going to happen. I can't trust a stranger to sustain that consistent wealth transfer to my children. So how do you help them cover that?
Honestly, the answer to that is structure. Because many times that feeling of if my child is not at the center, it will not continue. Many times it doesn't quite pan out. I've seen cases where children were put on boards, were put on this and that, and they didn't participate. It didn't make a difference. So what you need to do is create the right structure. First of all, realize that there's a difference between ownership and management. Your children and your family can be owners of that business, but they don't have to be the managers of that business. When you create the right structure, and it's not you handing over everything to a stranger, it's you creating, first of all, finding the person whose skills and attitude aligns most with the building of that entity. Then creating structure around them to keep them accountable. That's part of what we do. We're not handing it over. There will be checks and balances. We will stress test the system. Okay, if this happens, what do you do? If this happens, how do you change it? It's not 100%, but it will get you closer to where you need to go, because there will always be risk. There will always be.
So there's one question that I've been seeing actually coming up often. So usually, you know, in a home, the man is usually the wealth maker, and he passes on to his wife and children. But now we have families where the wife is the one who creates the wealth.
Absolutely.
And there's usually a transition of where she just hands it over to the children, and somehow the man is forgotten. You know, so what advice you give families like that, especially if the woman felt that throughout her marriage she was badly behaved? You know, how do you also protect the man, because it's part of the family, that wealth creation, even if he was not the direct breadwinner?
So, you know, the thing about family is that it's a very tricky enterprise. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. So typically, when we go in, the first thing is that, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? There are families that they don't want to give anything to their children. They want to give it all to charity. They feel like as long as I've educated Nigerian families, oh yes, once I've educated them and I've empowered them, that's all I owe them, right? There are some that they want to give it to children, they want to give it to relatives. So based on our understanding of what they want, we now build a structure around it and we advise accordingly. So in the example that you gave, you want to give all to your children and neglect the husband. We would stress test that structure. What happens if, first of all, does he have any potential rights? What happens if he challenges this structure, right? So when we do that and we think of all the scenarios, we'll now create the structure that works best, because ultimately we cannot do anything against your desire. So it is us understanding what your goals are, building around your goals.
We have to wrap up.
No
Thank you. It was fun having you.
Thank you.
It's good to know that there are women in this space, because a lot of women are always scared when they build wealth to be sure that they are protected. You know, sometimes some of them have to hand it over to either spouses or family, but with people like you, we know that, okay, we can actually have a conversation on wealth. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely being here.
That's all we can take on today's show. Hope you learned a few things as we have. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.